Brian, what are some of the elements that San Jose presents that are going to challenge the way that you want to bring out your team tomorrow?
Well, they're going to be desperate, so we got to account for that. Look, they didn't have a good result up in Vancouver. They stayed here. They didn't fly back to come back up here, so they're taking this game very seriously. I know they have front office personnel here. Ian's a good coach. I mean, he's a good young coach. Look, he's in a bad spot, but he's gonna want to come home, put on a good show. And for that team, they're just, they're testing themselves now for next year. Who's going to be on the squad, who's not. And there's always that little bit of, maybe relief that they're out, mathematically eliminated. And can they play spoiler? So we can't put our guard down.
One of the challenges in playing teams like that is that a lot of those people are trying to prove themselves for next year. Right? And do you feel that presents a more difficult challenge for your team, given that you just played, but also that they'll probably be more aggressive, they'll take more chances than they really need to? Does that put you in a...
They can play free. They can play free. There's a subtle, like I said the other night, there's a subtle pressure on our guys, because we're expected to win, but we're working through that. I think the guys are confident. We do need to have to start a little bit better than we started against Sporting KC. I didn't like the first 15 minutes. So let's see how the game plays out, but I think our guys will be ready.
Ian, being a Seattle guy, have you guys had any connections in the past? Have you worked with him at all? What's your history?
We used to go down to Florida and Combine, and we'd always watch NFL, the Seahawks, me, Tommy, and Ian. I know Dave and Phoebe very well from my days coaching youth soccer at Seattle Youth Soccer. They're icons in the soccer community. So, a long history with that family.
On the field, what were your impressions of how he coached?
He was always a tough player. He's a tough player. I remember watching him play.
On the attacking end, Hernan Lopez and the rest of that attacking
end. Lopez is good.
How do you hold the 10 that has the freedom that he does and try to contain?
Just like we did with Puig.
How would you articulate the statistic of what the Sounders have been able to do in the standings, mainly against non-playoff teams and teams that maybe are not in playoff contention?
I think our record's been pretty good as of late. You guys can drag up the facts of LAFC. Fair enough. But other than that, we're pretty good.
Reed played 30, 40 minutes with a yellow card this last game. How big was that from a confidence-building standpoint, just to sort of have to do that?
Big. He knew the first game he messed up, but, we kept him out there on purpose, for him to gain that experience, and he checked that box. A little bit of growth there.
What have you seen from him in these last couple games? It sounds like he's playing a little bit of a different role than he's been used to playing, where, like you mentioned, he's been playing more as a third center back.
Well, that's subject to debate in the coach's office, because you don't want to pigeonhole a guy that has talent one way and just keep him over here. But, the way we play, that position is kind of more defensive-minded first, and then when or if we need a goal, his skill set comes in handy. But, Jonathan Bell came there and locked the game down, knew who's been a lockdown defender. But I think Reed has a little bit more to his game.
Can you talk to us a little bit about his physicality? And how does that play into his game?
He's getting there.
Yeah, and he's mature.
You remember him when he was a skinny kid,
yeah.
Couldn't run right. He's filled out now. He's a much better athlete. So good physical profile.
But he also, his maturation, this goes to Jeremiah's question. We asked him about the yellow card, and he really just gave a real good breakdown about using the line, not going in there, and also trusting the two center backs. And he said he talked to him.
I'll watch the interview.
Yeah. Good. But it was a 101 in terms of his maturation.
Yeah. I think maybe his answers match the way he's matured on the field. I'll listen.
And Brian, go ahead.
Speaking of the left back spot, really quick, how's he doing after getting back from
He's fine.
Cameroon?
He's fine.
And then Joao Paul, any update there? So we looking at
Still, I mean, look, if we could get him back for Colorado, that'd be a miracle. But I wouldn't put it past him because he's a pretty determined man.
What do you need to see in that first 15 minutes without
A
going
little
into
bit better
X's
play.
and O's?
A little bit better play. I thought we were a little loose, I would call it. You know. But, you know, again, credit Kansas City for coming in and starting the game off pretty good. And, you know, we want to try and be aggressive at home. But every game has momentum swings. It's MLS.
Is that
Sports,
intentionality?
pro sports.
Sorry, is that intentionality in your passes? Because you know how you like your first pass after you get
Well,
it.
we like to have the first pass forward, yes.
Yeah.
But they did a good job in their mid-block and made it challenging for us.
Brian, as somebody who has been, you know, in soccer for the entirety of your professional career,
Call me old.
Very.
how much joy are you getting out of seeing your kids mature and process through the system and be able to then now get a kid like Reed to be a contributor on your team? Hey, what does that do for you outside of just, you know, provide you with another tool, but from a personal standpoint? Can you
Love it.
share with us?
Love it. I mean, he's a local kid. Look, I think Danny Leva and his generation kind of started it, AOC and some of those kids. Danny's not a Seattle kid, but I feel he's almost like a native. So he has done a great job, trains well, trains hard. He sets a really good example for all the kids that have come after him. You know, Bed had a good day of training today. You know, Jackson and Paul are different but similar because they're from Seattle. They've had a different kind of upbringing, but they're still making waves and they're Seattle kids. You know, Josh, Reed, Cody, who am I missing? You know, some of those kids. Sota. I mean, they're all kids that have been from around this area. And it brings me back when we were growing up. I mean, our team, the Lake City Hawks, had 5 guys that had varied lengths of pro careers, and Tacoma had Mark Peterson, Jeff Stock, and Durgan. I mean, we've produced. Then you go to Chance Fry, Dickey, Billy Crook, you know, that generation. I mean, we've always produced good players, so that's a source of pride for me.
But Brian, how has this club been able to, all those, you know, decades you talked about, where your stars have also embraced helping the young people? And
Well, I think we've done a pretty darn good job
Very
of
good
getting
job.
good character here. You know, I mean, the whole, you know, when Ziggy started us off, Ziggy wanted good people. You know, he felt it was important to have a really good locker room. I learned a lot of some of the things that I talk about from Zig. So that first initial group in '09, the tight locker room, they were all pulling in the right direction. And, you know, Nico recently, you know, I always like to bring back Nelson Valdez, you know, Andreas Ivanchit, some of those guys. They were good pros, and they helped the young guys out big time.
Where's Leo Chu at? We saw him working independently.
He's got a little groin injury, so he won't be participating.
When it comes to Raul Ruiz, how important is it to get him play time, to get him ready for what's ahead, whether it's the end of the season or playoff time?
He'll be ready. I'm not worried about Raul.
So there's no necessity of any play
He
time?
trains hard. Trains hard. When I put him on the field, whenever I put him on the field, he'll be ready.
Would
I
you
have
get,
full confidence in him.
and when you get results with, you know, the variation of players all contributing, is that taking you any farther away from figuring out what's your best 11, what works best, what's your real?
We're still working Pedro into that mix. We still got a couple games to go. There's some fixture congestion. We'll get it right.
How hard is it for young guys to, Lynn Pedros, is it easier for him to start the game or come into that? Because you kind of have to.
Well, for him, it's just fitness related. I mean, I told you guys why we kept him out of this game or the last game, because just the time between Columbus, San Jose, and Houston is just better for his program.
How much more are you learning from him as a player, particularly? How
Say
much
that
are you-
again?
How much more are you learning from him as a player? I mean, you've got limited time with him in minutes. Are you still in the learning curve with Pedro de la Vega?
No, I know who he is. Good player.